Which is dedicated to the preservation and teaching of the late James Posse, and also the Martial Art Collective Society, which is an organization formed by and several other martial artists to help preserve the arts, whether they be Japanese, Okinawan, Chinese, Filipino, Indonesian arts, Korean arts, and so on. The purpose of this tape is to introduce you to a series of concepts and theories which deal much more abstract than what has done what's been done before. This deals with what we call manipulation of the subconscious mind. First principles I'm going to deal with is what we call the four-wall concepts theories. The name of the series of tapes is Koshuru no Kenza, which basically refers to wisdom and movement, but also it deals with magic. Koshuru has been said by many people looks magical. We're going to attempt to explain some of this to you. Remember this as well, that as we go through the tape, and as you learn from this, pick up some of the concepts and theories, but try to understand what these really deal with. Now watch. In this tape, four-wall concept, and also a principle called structure. Let me first of all explain to you what this is. Four-wall concept is dealing with our need for balance within our environment. If that balance is taken away somehow, or if it is played with or distorted, we lose a certain amount of our natural abilities to remain natural. Therefore, we might not be able to maybe manipulate body motion or use body motion properly. We might lack power in whatever we seek to do. We also might lack focus. In combat, the one thing you want to be able to do with an opponent is to eliminate their abilities to, one, have focus, two, have balance or base, three, you want to be able to take away their mental, spiritual, and physical abilities to gain any type of momentum towards a throw or a strike or a hit. Four-wall concept, the reason for the term, is because we do, as humans, we seek to find areas of comfort. A good example of this would probably be in the way certain people live. There's a Chinese practice called feng shui, which is a way to basically negotiate things within a house to create positive, what they would say positive chi or ki. If you create distortions within a home, you also create mental unrest. And this is understandable. Some people need a clean environment to exist. Some people want flow or proper flow to take place. Well, four-wall concept in a way is the same thing. If you had to exist within a building or a structure that only had three walls, you would not have the same comfort or the same ability to negotiate your body within that space. You would have less alternatives. If you come into a four-wall environment, the manipulation of an object, the manipulation of a center, or the manipulation of where someone would think they had center, but also have a tendency to destroy that and make them uncomfortable. The term structure is that concept, which we'll deal with, has to do with the way an individual would place themselves in a state of reality. The difference between reality and illusion really isn't that much difference. However, there's a marked difference when it comes to their ability to respond or maneuver or negotiate space. When we study Koshiro, the idea is we want to be able to look at things more than the way we perceive them at the moment. We want to be able to reach into our bag of tricks and reach deeply and find more and more about what it is that we perceive we know. Four-wall concept is to renegotiate space, to implement timing, and to create a state of uneasiness in an opponent's subconscious mind. Now you notice I'm saying subconscious, I'm not saying conscious mind. When we think in terms of things consciously, then what we do is we can find and negotiate or come up with different answers to solve a problem. But when you manipulate the subconscious mind, the body does things naturally. And if the body has to renegotiate naturally, but in a distorted way, you have just countered your opponent's ability to exist in a combative manner with you. What I'm going to do is show you some of the ideas of this. And first what I'll do is explain about four walls. If I was teaching a class, and say a seminar, one thing you would see that people have a tendency to sit around the instructor in a perfectly symmetrical way. When I say symmetrical way, meaning that they will negotiate the space between each other, which will almost be the same space. The person on the far point, on both ends of the grouping of people, would probably negotiate their space the same amount of distance between themselves and the walls. They will circle around the person that is centered. Also, if the person that is giving a speech or a lecture or a class told them to get up, whoever he is centered with will be the first person in that group of people to move. This you can relate to in masses of people that come together, but you can also look at it when it comes to the physical anatomy of one person moving. When you determine where a point of reference is within a group of people or within the anatomy of an opponent, you can then know what part of their anatomy to manipulate subconsciously to throw the rest of the body off. These things you must learn to watch, observe. People follow the environment. I was discussing something a while, a similar situation with a gentleman who took me to an airport, and I was telling how we are habitual and we all negotiate naturally within a walled environment. And we were watching people getting off the plane. Over on one side of the plane, on where the gateway is, you had where the people sat over the tickets and this. Well, anyway, it was kind of an obstructed area to hear. Over on this side, everybody was seated. So you had more of an open space. But what I pointed out to the individual that the natural response of the body is to turn away from the block area and view what is over here, which you had more space. Everybody got off the plane. They took one step when they were from where the gateway is to where the airport terminal was. Their head viewed right away to the right. Every single person. They naturally ignored this and they paid attention to this. So when they viewed what was out in front, they right away shifted their head this way. This is the same thing that takes place in combat if somebody wishes to strike, hit, or attack. If you can study these things and understand these things, you can manipulate an opponent when it kumite. You could possibly correct a student when it comes to doing kata, if you understand where their wall concept or ideas of four walls are. An example, someone throwing a punch. I'm going to let him throw a punch slowly. I'm not going to do anything blind. But what I want you to do is you're going to view, or I'm going to view, the space here in which he needs to hit. Now, a couple of things have taken place. One is by him standing the way he has. I have not told him how to do this, but his hips have naturally negotiated the space that he has here. This side of the body, this elbow is freer, and it's not as free as this one, as far as manipulation and movement. Now, partially it's because he wants to hit, but the other reason is because he has more freedom here. He's adjusting to the more space that he has in the room. Now, as he strikes, what I want to do is view all of the space and distance it takes for him to hit. Okay? This is important. Any place that I cut into that four-wall concept to create a triangular room to him will throw him off slightly. Now, right now his target is here, so as he's striking again, we'll let him come through. Now, if he starts to strike again, and I just move to here, what's happening is there's a compression on his back hip. That compression takes place, number one, is because the left hand, as it was trying to draw back, compressed itself further into the shoulder. But what did it was that the left hand is because I moved the triangle, or is it because of the fact that I allow the triangulation to take place with this corner in the room? That corner in the room is part of my triangulation to here. Okay, and my other point is here, which causes compression here within the spine. Now, I know it doesn't seem like much, but it is. What's really going on is subconsciously his body will acquiesce to that corner. Now, an example of this, if he's going to strike again, but this time here, he'll line up his body in more of a neutral plane. This part of the anatomy is turned out. Why? It's because he's now in a squared room. He's more comfortable. So, because he's comfortable, now what I want to do is I want to tighten that up. So how I must do that is very simple. Subconsciously, I could manipulate, create the same problem he has here. As he goes to punch, I stick this leg out. This leg comes out. What it does is it causes a little bit more compression to here. So my triangulation as far as space is here to here. So what's happened to him now, he's adjusted in this direction. And these are slight, subtle things. It might not have that big of an effect on an opponent as far as throwing a ball, but it will as far as your counter and your repositioning for him to throw a secondary strike or hit. The objective of Kosho is to become magical. So if my opponent is here and I'm aware of the walls, and Sensei goes to hit, when I'm adjusting, what I'm doing there is taking my opponent and bringing his movement back slightly. The hit is here with a strike or the throw. If he's going to strike and I step to here, what I'm doing now is changing the gate to this direction. So I can create again three walls. If you look at where my left leg is, as he goes to move, I cut to here. That's going to cause a compression of the lower back. Okay? So he has to negotiate again with that space where I'm at. And you notice how much strength I'm using now. So I'm using it. Makes sense? So as this man goes to strike, I cut this wall. So now I'm giving him three walls. I want to straighten him up. What I do is I just go back and give him four walls again. He moves again, three. He moves again, four. Moves again, three. Okay, so what I'm doing now in relationship to my opponent, I'm messing with their idea of what is comfortable and what is not. Where he's at right now, he will acquiesce naturally to his weight, my position, and posture. Remember this too, that you will negotiate your balance and your weight to those walls and to that environment. Right now, he has built a natural security in between my hip, rotation to here, and here. This is a plane of physical motion that I call it. We both adjusted to the walls. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stand behind my back wall. As he goes to hit, what that does is that stretches him out. Now I'm going to take place in the other wall. He moves, I create the triangle. So what you're doing is you're negotiating with their body to move naturally and to find their balance point. Now watch. And if you study combat and warfare, you will also understand that many wars and many battles were won not so much because the opposing general knew how to manipulate an army through the physical manipulation of an army, but because the opposing general knew how to manipulate the environment, which allowed that army to feel secure. You take away the security of physical motion, of movement, of the ability to move, or even if it's an illusion, you take away one's spirit. An example of that is Julius Caesar, who fought the Gauls. He showed up with a force or an army which was half the size of his opposing army. He did something that was very unorthodox, but actually something that was genius. He actually divided his own forces, had one half of his army go behind where the Gauls were. Now, the opposing army could have crushed Caesar. He could have crushed both sides, actually. But what he did is he manipulated the areas around by creating multiple fires within the environment. Now, of course, the thinking is, from the strategists, that it made the Gauls think that the Romans were greater in number by having campfires. Was it that, or was it the fact that when the Gauls first lined up their troops and their army in relationship to Caesar, that they also lined themselves up within an area of mountains, rivers, creeks, and made their own army and their own mass comfortable? If you put a mountain range in between troops of an army, you weaken them. If you manipulate that environment, you weaken them. Examples of that would be Custer, when his 7th Cavalry were divided. They weren't divided just by giving out orders, but they had mountain ranges and rivers that divided their forces. Could it be that those things created an insecure feeling within the troops? The physical body does the same thing. If you have someone that is sitting somewhere, or say talking to you, and you were to place an object close to part of their anatomy, you will find that they will become very uneasy and uncomfortable with that. It is learning to put objects in places to create a physical movement subconsciously, and to be able to manipulate that at will is where your magic comes in. Examples, that when people fight and hit, they will also negotiate. The four walls are not just what is negotiated from the observation of objects, but it is also the touch and the feeling of objects, or the appearance that you might touch or feel. These are things that you want to pay attention to as well. Examples of this would be, if I'm blocking a man, he throws a punch. As soon as I block that arm, his body will acquiesce and pay attention to that, the force that I threw the block and the hit. His body will naturally, subconsciously adjust to that pressure and that touch. Also, what I'm doing is I'm creating also a different state within him, to where he's also going to kick in the adrenals. This man's going to hit differently. Now, if he expected that response, his body subconsciously is going to adjust to it. However, if he goes to punch, I go, that is going to throw his body and his mind and everything all differently again. He was expecting a hard strike, but it did not take place. What happens within the anatomy from there? You're going to get a different response from the secondary strike or from the hit. So everything's going to be a lot different. Vary your movement, vary your strikes, vary your distance. In doing so, you're going to change your own body structure. Four-wall concept. Remember this. When you walk into a room, your body, right away, first thing you do is you see everything there within the room. Your brain picks up those things and your body adjusts to that room or that space. When someone is hitting, they're doing the same thing. Problem. You in the martial arts that practice blocking or practice hitting, are you not setting your opponent up to throw the next movement even harder? If my opponent's throwing a punch and I step here, his eyes are looking right where his next target's going. Was it the fact that he's looking at me do this, or was it the fact that I move, which allowed his eyes to track and allowed the rest of the anatomy to come in? So what I'm really doing is contributing to this guy's power. He goes to hit, and I go, I'm going to contribute. He goes to hit, and I go, he's not sure how he's going to manipulate his movement now. Why? It's because I did the opposite of what his subconscious brain thought. Four walls became three instantly. He goes to hit, it's a strike, but I'm back here now again. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating almost where those walls are coming in and back. Now what that's doing to his body is not sure where to go. So ways that you can practice this: break up the planes of what I call the planes of reality to an opponent. If his visual, I step here, I'm actually training his body to readjust. So I might want to do that, but then I'm here. What that does to him is this: it throws his body out to where he can't track naturally. So subconsciously, now what's happening is I'm dominating him. Problem: I've touched his arm. 4 walls again. His body, his natural subconscious state, is going to adjust to that touch. What happens? Learn to change the touch. Therefore, now learn to tilt the rule. He moves, I do this. All I did was took the pinky and I moved it upward, which caused his body to move. Remember, that is touch. Right now, I've got my arm on his. His body and his weight will become dependent on that arm. He goes to hit. What I'm doing is changing the touch with the arm. This time I'm just moving it slightly to here, which shows the man off here. Man strikes. What I'm doing is, what did it feel like?
No, I just felt like I went to hit something and it's gone, but I thought it was still going to be there, so my body overthrew itself out and I can adjust to your movement.
Now, the reason I'm asking him this, to explain this to you so that you can understand. This is difficult to do on tape, right? Now, right now, I'm barely touching him with my elbow. Okay, he goes to move again. I create a little bit of a heavier touch here on the pec. This time I do this. I'm touching right here at the bottom of his arm. As he goes to move again, if I just touch that one knuckle, it's going to also throw him off. Now, what's happening is his weight is adjusting to that touch. Now, his body can ignore that and hit, but it can't, because also what I'm doing is manipulating space. If he goes to readjust his hit right now, which he'll do naturally based upon that finger, based upon where I'm at, and based upon this structure. He goes to move again, but this time I'm here, behind his back. He did not expect that. What did that feel like?
I thought that your hand was going to be there to resist when you move.